You don't like women in combat?
No.
Why not?
I love women service members who contribute amazingly, because everything about men and women serving together makes the situation more complicated, and complication in combat means casualties are worse. But when you actually break down what they did in the studies to open the door for women in combat, I mean, they just ignored them. So the Marine Corps was the only service that actually tried to fight back and say, and now obviously I'm exempting special operations, which thus far has held the line fairly well. Because if they were lowering the standard to become a Navy SEAL, just to let women inside the Navy SEALs, that's gonna change the capabilities and ethos of the Navy SEALs, except for a very small example of some, female super soldier who's capable of doing it. But because of how Washington works, they're gonna change the standards, they're gonna push for quotas. We have numerous quotes in the book of, no, these standards aren't changing, they're just evolving. Okay, they're just evolving to meet the needs of today.
They're not getting tougher,
They're not getting tougher. The reason women started getting in combat is because of forward support companies. We were integrating a lot of the rear echelon activities into BCTs, brigade combat teams, that were now deploying forward as an entity. And so you had women truck drivers or fuel or mechanics on these convoys in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then they'd be ambushed or hit by IEDs, and suddenly now you have women in combat. That's different than intentionally saying, we're gonna put women into combat roles so they will do the combat jobs of men, knowing that we've changed the standards in putting them there, which means you've changed the capability of that unit. And if you say you haven't, you're a liar. Because everybody knows between bone density and lung capacity and muscle strength, men and women are just different. And so if you want to, I'm okay with the idea that you maintain the standards where they are for everybody. And if there's some, hard-charging female that meets that standard, great, cool, join the infantry battalion. But that is not what's happened.
Yeah.
What has happened is the standards have lowered. I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. Most of them actually a lot of them are pushed, I shouldn't say most, but many are pushed into a combat track because they're so highly capable. But if they had their first choice, it probably wouldn't be that. I mean, the Marine Corps did the study. Integrated units, meaning male, female, did drastically worse than all-male units. And Ray Mabus, who was the Secretary of the Navy in 2015, said, oh, fuck your study. We're doing it. Because that's what the Obama administration wanted. Take the assassination attempt of President Trump. I mean, in a perfect world, would you want to have like 6'3" guys guarding a 6'3" president?
Well, I'll tell you what, it sure as hell doesn't make sense to have a 5'5" woman in there guarding a 6'2" man.
Standards and capabilities have been subordinated to agendas.
So Trump's new Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has stirred the pot by saying women shouldn't be in combat roles. Why? Well, apparently biology is still a thing. Women aren't as physically capable as men, surprise, surprise, and lowering the standards to tick diversity boxes has made the military weaker. This isn't exactly rocket science, but some critics, fueled more by feelings than facts, seem to disagree.
There are over 200,000 American women who serve in active duty service right now, thousands of them in frontline combat roles. You were one of them. Do your colleagues who sit with you on armed services believe that Mr. Hegseth's statement there is an issue that he needs to perhaps retract?
Well, I think they need to because he's wrong. Our military could not go to war without the 220,000 plus women who serve in uniform. The women in our military does make us more effective. And so he's just flat out wrong. Our military could not go to war without the women who wear this uniform. And frankly, America's daughters are just as capable of defending liberty and freedom as her sons.
Having served in combat yourself, what do you think of the idea that women make fighting more complicated? That was specifically what he focused on.
Well, it just shows his lack of understanding of where our military is. You know, he was a pretty low-ranking guy in the military, and he never had a command position. He was a platoon leader, I think, once or twice, but he never even commanded a company. And so this is a man who is inordinately unqualified for the position. Women actually make our military more effective.
Keep telling yourself that, darling.
One of Canada's top military commanders also chimed in with the usual "how dare you" energy.
After 39 years of career as a combat arms officer and risking my life in many operations across the world, I can't believe that in 2024, we still have to justify the contribution of women to their defense and to their service in their country. And all the women sitting here in uniform, stepping in and deciding to get into harm's way and fight for their country need to be recognized for doing so. So again,
To make it clear, Hegseth isn't against having women in the military or saying their contributions don't matter. He's just pointing out that combat roles require peak physical standards, and lowering those standards puts everyone at risk. But instead of addressing the studies and stats, critics are going straight for the emotional playbook and trying to frame this as an attack on women. It's almost as if proving him right is their game plan. And no one's questioning the sacrifices women are made in service, but refusing to acknowledge the complications women in combat create. That's like insisting a square peg belongs in a round hole.
I actually worked with Pete Hegseth on this very issue in 2014 when the discussion was first starting, before President Obama lifted the ground combat exemption for women. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about pilots. We're not talking about submarines. We're not talking about ships, okay? We're talking about infantry men who go cave to cave and spend up to 6 months out into field operations where you're not even showering on a regular basis. It is one of the most detrimental jobs, most physically demanding jobs. And I will tell you, women cannot equally defend themselves against a fellow fighter who usually fights on methamphetamines. It's equivalent to putting a woman in a mixed martial arts cage with a man. Even the best female athlete is not going to be able to sustain herself. Why? Because we have 45% less muscle mass, 20% less lung capacity. I'm going to take it one step further. The Marine Corps was the only branch of service that stood up to President Obama on this very issue. They said, we're going to do a study and prove to you whether it works or not. 9 months, they went out into field operations. They had women graduate infantry training school. They enlisted and then went out to 29 Palms, one of the most desert training environments, and demonstrated whether women could sustain with men. The integrated units with women and men were only 60% effective compared to non-integrated, only male-based units. Even the most qualified woman is always going to bump a more qualified man. The women that have gone through infantry officers course always continue to fail until they had to modify the requirements in order to have women pass. And very small numbers have. And one of the first women who had already graduated the school already has had to be discharged because of the physical limitations that have had upon her body. They have 20 to 30% more physical injury. Why is that? We don't have testosterone and our muscles cannot recover.
This female Marine who actually saw combat admitted it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Captain Katie Petronio played ice hockey in college. She squats 200 pounds and benches 145 pounds. She's already seen combat, 2 tours, one in Iraq and an even tougher one in Afghanistan. She ranked 4th out of 52 candidates in Officer Candidate School.
I wrote this article because 5 years ago, when I finished the basic school and just pinned on as an officer, I would have fully supported integration of females into the infantry. After 2 combat deployments, my perspective on this has completely changed.
Women will go through this combat endurance test, which has elements similar to the hand-to-hand combat shown here in this Army training video. And Captain Petronio worries that as the Department of Defense looks at ways to level the playing field for women, they may be harming female troops in the end. 2 combat tours taught her she wasn't physically as capable as her male counterparts.
I found that I broke down and had muscle atrophy and weight loss at a much faster rate and noticeable rate than my male Marines. I found myself tripping constantly, my legs buckling, falling during firefights, having a hard time responding to enemy contact as far as my response time from when I initially got to country.
Turns out war isn't about empowerment, it's about surviving. Lowering the standards to boost diversity might look good on a politician's resume, but on the battlefield it's the kind of move that gets people killed.
Women don't belong in combat jobs. That's as simple as I can state that. Now, JoJo here says a female member of my family served in combat. She went through the exact same rigorous training as her male counterparts. She passed all of it, and then she went out there and put her life on the line for all of us. So anyone who says women shouldn't serve in combat can fuck off. Well, I guess that means me, because JoJo, no, she didn't. Because in every school in the United States military, with the exception of Ranger School and other special operations trainings, the female standards are lower than the male standards, meaning that women can be less fit, fast, and strong and still attain the same passing grade that men do. But when your standards are lower and you're not as fit, fast, or strong as your male counterparts, that makes you a less capable warfighter. That makes you lesser than. Now, JoJo, you want this to be true? That's fine. Give women the exact same physical standards that men have. Make women achieve the same standards in the PT test, the same standards in everything we do, and then you'll have equality.
No, women should absolutely not serve in combat roles in the military. And I say this as somebody that is a decorated U.S. Army infantryman. I had a combat infantry badge, and I have 2 deployments in the Middle East. Women should not be serving in combat roles because, number one, most of the time, they are just not strong enough to do so. Now, when I served in my infantry unit, it was all male. They do not allow women in the combat infantry. And one of the reasons is because they're not physically capable enough to do the job. And the push to shove women into combat roles in the military has nothing to do with whether or not women actually really wanted to do this. It has to do a lot with the woke agenda that has been pushed through the military during the Biden administration and probably over these past 10 years. And if you look into the women that really have been placed into these combat roles, all of the qualifications, both physical and everything else, have been lessened so that these women can be there and so that, you know, the Biden administration and all of these people could get some woke points. It's just not a place where women belong.
And let's not forget the recent TikTok trend where women were panicking at the idea of being drafted. Suddenly a lot of the feminist rhetoric about equality and combat readiness seemed to vanish.
Flashback.
A new bill before Congress would require young women for the first time to register for the draft just like young men.
What? Ladies 18 to 26, hope you're ready to get drafted. It is not just the boys.
No, I can tell you right now you don't want me. Take one look at me. You think I can defend our country? I can barely defend myself in an argument. Why do women even have rights? I want to go back in time to when we had to be in the kitchen, no voting, no working, no rights. I'm fine with that. I don't want to go to war. I'll be in the kitchen making Pookie a sandwich until he gets back. I'm cool with that.
Drafted into what, my guy? I can't even argue with someone without crying. I'm gonna show up in my Ugg slippers, my Stanley Cup, with my Dyson Airwrap. I hope my acrylic nails don't fall.
Who do you think you're talking to? We're literally all mentally ill. Disqualified. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, sounds like fun. I should be free, but I did have a few quick questions before I committed to anything for sure.
I'm not ready right now. I just woke up, I was gonna shower and wash my hair, but let me know where it is, and if I'm feeling up for it, maybe I can meet you at the battle.
Big thank you to the uber feminists out there. You're the ones who are like, women can do anything. Yeah, I can do everything a man can do. Okay, well, had to open your big trap. Now women might be drafted in the military, and you can't even complain about it because you wanted this. You wanted equality for all. I don't want to be drafted.
Look, in the interest of freedom, anyone who wants to join the military should be able to, provided they can meet the criteria and the standards. But when do we get to stop pretending that men and women are physically equal? They literally put Ted Cruz's quote about how women should never be in a circumstance to face hand-to-hand combat with a man as if he's wrong.
Now when someone like Hegseth advocates for protecting women by removing them from dangerous combat roles, the same critics are up in arms again.
God damn it! You can't make this shit up!
If anything, this demonstrates to me that Hegseth respects women and he wants to protect them. Not just by keeping them out of harm's way, but by ensuring the military remains strong and capable of defending the country by having the best people there. Because let's be real, the military isn't a Netflix series where a diversity casting saves the day. It's about capability, plain and simple. To me, it don't seem like he's trying to disrespect women. It seems he's trying to protect them while making sure the military can actually win wars. If that's controversial, maybe the real problem is how much sense it makes.